I know as the family was greeted by all the different people that have come, it touched their hearts to see how many people from so many chapters of their lives, and especially of Harvey's lives, have shown up today. And that's what we do when we don't know what to say, when we don't know how to respond. What we do is we just show up. We show up, and I understand Harvey's secretary of 50 years is here, and it really touched the family that you're here. I also want to mention that Brian and the caregivers are here. And when I told Popey just a minute ago what you said, that there are some people that you just keep you doing what you're doing. And this is one of those families. They said that taking care of Harvey and being there with you, Popey, makes them really appreciate the work that they're able to do. Every time I was there, Brian was there, right by Harvey's side, really making those last days and moments bearable for everyone. So the Jewish tradition gives us an image. It says that oftentimes we see ships going out from shore. And when the ship goes out, there's a great celebration with streamers and all kinds of parties. But when the ship comes back, it's just quiet, no one there to greet it. The rabbis say it should be just the opposite. It should be that when the ship goes out, when we don't really know what the journey's going to be like, we just sit there in quiet prayer, hoping for the best. And then when it comes back safely, after all the journeys and the voyages and the adventures, then we should be celebrating. And they liken that to a life well lived. That, when the ship goes out, when Harvey was born, we didn't know all the adventures, all the relationships, all the stories that would accumulate in these many years. But coming back to shore, coming home today, we will have a chance to glimpse at just some of the beauty that was his life. Some of the laughter that he inspired, and these wonderful relationships that each and every one of you represent today. And so those of you who knew Harvey knew that he was an inventor. He was always thinking of another invention that would make life better and would sell. In fact, just before he died, before he got that last hug from Scotty through Mary, he asked about his brother Ernie. Probably because Ernie often helped Harvey engineer all of those inventions. Maybe Harvey had an idea that would help him cheat death once again. And also, maybe he had an idea that would help him taste a little something sweet instead of the feeding tube. If he could have had that invention, I'm sure he would have let us know. An invention that would give him back his life with the love of his life, his Popey, and with his family. And with your help and your love, I think Harvey did cheat death a little bit. He stayed as long as he could. And though his disease took much of him, he was still making us laugh almost until the very end. And so we gathered to celebrate his life, his relationships, his inventions, and the lessons of his life that his memory will be carried from generation to generation, believing that he and Ernie and Mark and all the others who have gone before are catching up in the world to come. And that when we remember him and see him in his sons, who somehow, I know they didn't send each other a memo, but definitely color coordinated today. We will see him in you, in your grandchildren, in the grandchildren, and in your hearts. And in that way, I believe we really do cheat death every time we make his memory a blessing. So I wonder if we could read together the words of the 23rd Psalm, the top of the inside cover, that remind us when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death together, We will not be afraid because we know that it is to celebrate the lives of those we have loved. And so we read, God is my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside the still waters, and you restore my soul. You lead me in the paths of righteousness for your name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of God forever. Typically, we read Psalms at times like this to remind us that we are not the first nor the last to walk through this valley of shadows. I found a poem that I thought was like a psalm that I thought might speak to this great loss. It says, I hate death. You spend 30, 50, 60 years coming to know someone, and you become heart to heart, soul to soul with someone. It takes just 25 years for that. When you know someone 25 years, you begin to melt into each other. You become like them, and they become like you. We often call this love. It's better. It's melting. I melt into you, you melt into me. But when you know someone for 50, 60 years, it's soul to soul. When you know someone for this long, it's more than melting. Your souls begin to converge, and we call this convergence one. Something different from each of us. We become one somebody else. This happens when you've been together this long. That's why I hate death. After melting into each other, after convergence, after becoming one with each other, I hate death because after that someone dies. And then you have to wait. Thresholding, we call it. We wait on the threshold for each other. I hate death because someone dies. And then we wait on the threshold until we're together again. This we call God. We all wait on the threshold, you see, for our beloved. And they wait for us. That's why I hate death. It's the waiting till we join each other again. This is what we call God. And this is what we mean when we say we are waiting for God. God is actually waiting for us. It's code for we are waiting for each other. And we wait. This is the source of all. Our hunger, the heart to heart, the melting, the soul to soul, the convergence, the becoming one, the 25 years, and then the 60 years. And then there's death. And then there's waiting at the threshold. And all of this is God. And so, another poet wrote, and I'd like us to read also this together. You can shed tears that he has gone, or you can smile because he has lived. You can close your eyes and pray that he will come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that he has left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see him, or you can be full of the love that you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember him only that he's gone, or you can cherish his memory and let him go on. You can cry and close your mind, be empty and turn your back, or you could do what you would want. Smile, open your eyes, love, go on. And so we're going to celebrate that ship coming home today with all of the stories and the memories that will be shared by Harvey's family. And in Ecclesiastes, it says that there is a time for everything under heaven. There's a time to keep silent, and in the silence we remember. But this is the time that we speak. And so I'd first like to invite son David to come forward and offer his memories. Then we'll hear from Marty J., his brother-in-law, from Melissa,
Well, I have to have some water. So I'm here to tell you why I feel great today. Because I feel great because I had my dad for 88 years. I feel great because he's touched everyone in this room. Because he would want everyone here to feel great. Because I guarantee you what he's doing right now is he's looking over his mother Fanny's shoulder. She's got 5 cards in her hand, and he's telling her what to do. She's looking up at him and saying, you don't know what to do. You're not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to do what I want to do. And on it's going to go. So this is a celebration that should define my dad's life, because Brian, who was Dad's primary caregiver for the last 9 months, saw and loved my dad, but the last 9 months don't define my dad. My dad's life was defined over the 88 years minus the last 9 months. So this really is a celebration, and I'm here to share with you some of the stories that have been the life experiences with my dad. And I wanted to start by I just wrote down a poem. So why did I write down a poem? My dad loved to write poems. You know, every birthday, holiday, when there was a party, you could see the scribble. My dad, even though he didn't know he had Parkinson's then, you couldn't read anything he wrote. And he would scribble, and then he would tell a poem that he had wrote at, you know, a birthday or whatever event. So I decided I would start with a poem. Judy and I were over with my mother at her condo earlier today, and it took us an hour to get back to the hotel because of the marathon. So I decided to write my poem called The Marathon for my dad. So I'm going to start with The Marathon, which I have to read because I have to memorize it. Life is a marathon that we all run at our own pace. Experience is the fuel that powers the race. Our dreams are our companion in the journey along the way, and hope is the breath that we take every day. The hills that we navigate, the pain and despair, define who we are and make us so rare. Life is a marathon that we run at our own pace, but the finish means little as far as our place, for our lives will be measured by how we ran the race. That's the point. So, for me, I'm an amalgamation of my mom and my dad. I see a lot of things in my mom that are me. I see a lot of things in my dad that are me. And then the rest of it gets shaped through our experiences together, our experiences with friends, with family, with siblings. The other day I was sitting at the computer watching old movies, Super 8 movies that we had converted. And it was Dad around my age. And I just started listening to it, and I actually went upstairs and I said to Judy, I sound exactly like my dad when he was my age. I mean, I was listening to myself when he was talking, and I'd never heard that before. That was kind of a unique experience for me. But it's just amazing how much we pick up from our parents, and I am so happy to have whatever percentage of me is the result of my dad, which is just another reason why I'm here to celebrate. I'm happy that I can share with you some of the stories that I just want to tell. One of the things that Dad gave to everyone in our family, gave it to my brother Mark, may he rest in peace, Kenny, myself, my mom. We all love music. Music was a daily part of Dad's life, and the old LPs were stacked up and eclectic. You know, my dad defined eclectic with his music taste. It could have been opera, it could have been musicals, it could have been standards, whatever was popular at that time. I mean, the list is endless of the types of things that he listened to and loved to listen to. I'm going to share a humorous story, one that was a sign of the times back in the early 1970s. Something you may or may not know about my dad. I came home, I think it was a Sunday afternoon, I came home from some athletic event, I'm sure, and tried to go out the den door in the back of our house to the patio where my dad was, and my brother Mark met me at the door and said, "You can't go out there." And I said, "What do you mean I can't go out there?" He said, "You can't go out there. You can't go out there today." Well, my bedroom overlooked the patio, so not stupid. I just went to my bedroom, I raised up the blind and watched what was going on. my cousin Ron, who's here today, was there with my dad and with my brother, and they were doing something that Bill Clinton admitted to doing years and years ago. And this is 1972, and now I at the time didn't know what my dad was doing on the patio with, his nephew and my brother. All I knew is that night at dinner, which we always had a nice Sunday night dinner, he had 4 hot dogs. And he was playing Barbra Streisand at 9 on the stereo. I mean, the speakers were blowing out the room. Just a great example of Dad's love of life, his willingness to try anything. He just, he just didn't inhale, I'm sure. So, another musical thing I remember, because my dad loved to motivate us in different ways. A true story is that he did try to bribe me into dropping out of college. So it was grade-oriented. I think it was my junior year. I don't know if you remember, Mom. He said, why would I pay your tuition in your room? Or why don't I just write you a check for $25,000? Why don't you drop out of school and just go into business? Which I didn't do, but it was an interesting offer. So he made those offers periodically. And we were in California during high school, and I was in theater at the time, and we were having dinner in La Jolla at this really nice restaurant, and they had a piano, and they had a woman that was singing with the piano, and the piano player, the woman took a break, and we're having dinner at some point there, and my dad takes out his wallet, he takes out a $20 bill, and he puts it on the table, and he said, $20 if you go have the guy play a song and you sing it. And so I'm like, yeah. So after about 2 or 3 minutes, he picks up the 20 and he puts a 10 down. And he said, it isn't going up. So I said, put the 20 back. So he put the 20 back, and I went up and I sang a song. But that was my dad. He just, he was inspiring in a lot of different ways. So another way that he inspired me was in business. And really, even to the end, the last 9 months were not fun. Parkinson's is not a fun disease. And my dad had a bit of dementia in there, so he wasn't always with it. But he was always humorous, no matter what. He was humorous throughout all of this. And he used to talk to me about business, and he thought we were in business together. So we'd have these conversations that were not really meaningful in terms of anything real, but they were all focused around business. How's the business going, baby? Are we doing okay? Do we need to borrow any money? And I said, no, Dad, we don't need to borrow any money. We've got plenty of money. He just always wanted to talk about business. And one of the things that people that know me is that business is kind of all I do. And so Judy and I will go take walks. We'll be out, just in a park and sitting there and talking about things. And we'll be talking about subject. And I'll just say, that would be a great business. And every time I say that, we kind of look at each other and goes, that's exactly what your father would have said. He was an inventor. He loved to do things. Kenny's going to talk about, I don't want to talk about anything that would step on Kenny's toes, but he's going to talk a little bit about how Dad looked at those things. And athletics. He was always there, when we were being, whether it was football or baseball or basketball or track or any of the sports, tennis and golf, which, we all love to play. I remember that he's the first person that I ever saw that he loved to play doubles and he loved to play at the net. And he would invariably, on a shot that was down the line, would throw the racket from his right hand to his left hand and actually make shots at the net. So I always remember my dad as being the first person I saw that would take a racket, throw it to his left hand, and then make a winning shot at the net. I don't know how many people in the room have a hole-in-one. Dad had a hole-in-one in his life, so that was a memorable event. He wasn't without his foibles. He was an absolutely terrible videographer. The Super 8 videos that we've got are bouncing up and down all over the place. There's nothing steady about it. But he was a wonderful father. I really have nothing but good memories. There's only one bad memory I had of my dad. He got mad at me for selling a car. But other than that, I really don't have any bad memories. It was really a treat to have enjoyed and had him in my life for the 58 years that I had him in my life. And I know he wants this to be a celebration, and I hope everyone takes something out of this that puts a smile on their face, because that's exactly how he would want people to walk out of here today, is with a big smile on their face. And I guarantee you he's got a big smile on his face right now. So I'm going to turn it over to
Good afternoon. I'm Opie's brother, and my comments about Harvey, they go back a long, long time ago. He was kind of the surrogate father of your childhood and adolescence. Harvey taught me how to ride a bicycle. I guess I probably never would have learned how to ride a bicycle if it hadn't been for him. He was the person who took me on my first trip to New York in my last year of college. It was a whirlwind trip. At that time, he was an executive with a big company and had every kind of contact in the world that you could have. We were there for Fashion Week, and I was whirled from one show to another, from one reception to another. Every night we were doing something different, driving carriages along the west side of New York to restaurants that I would never ever visit again because they were just so expensive. And Harvey was just there, making sure that I had this exposure and enjoyed that time. And I did it with him a couple of times. He introduced me to some of the most amazing people. I remember being at a cocktail party at the home of Emilio Pucci. And Harvey was there, just mesmerized by this enormous collection of little toy soldiers and war vehicles. And we just, in fact, he continued to talk about that one experience. I think the rest of his life, every time I would see him, there would be, do you remember that evening? Do you remember that dinner party, that cocktail party we went to? He was the one who bought me my first watch when I graduated college. I never had a watch before that. And he loaned me his car, his treasured Jaguar convertible. Many times on a weekend, he would just say, take the car for the weekend and enjoy yourself. You don't even have to bring it home until Sunday. And I would be driving around St. Louis as a junior or sophomore in college in this fantastic Jaguar convertible. And I guess my most treasured moment with Harvey was the night that he said, "You want to go to see Funny Girl?" We were in New York, and I said, yeah, I mean, this was the ticket of the lifetime, Barbra Streisand. Everybody was talking about it. And I said, okay. He said, well, meet me at 9 o'clock. He said, well, Harvey, it starts at 8. He said, no, never mind. He said, I'll meet you at such and such a location. And meanwhile, all I saw were people coming out of the theater. And that's when Harvey said, okay, let's go in. Just go in, stand over on the side, and look like you belong here. And that was my introduction to seeing the second half of Broadway. And to this day, I can thank Harvey for that. I tried it on my own a couple of years later, going to see Hello, Dolly, and got caught. But he was, he will always be a treasure to someone who really needed to have a surrogate father, because my father was busy all the time working, and Harvey was kind of the youthful person that belonged in your life at that time. And Scott?
Melissa.
Grandpa, I thought it was weird to give a speech about you to other people, so I decided to say a few things to you directly, because I know you're listening. First off, I miss you like crazy. At dinner the other day, I was waiting for you to roll on in and sit down at the head of the table where you always sat right by my side. Although we love Grandma, you have the best sense of humor. You always made me and anyone who came in contact with you laugh. That will be the thing I'll miss the most. You always dressed the part too, but you already knew that. I'm so happy to have created so many memories with you that I will have forever. I'll never forget at my tennis matches looking over and seeing you sitting on the side of the court in your polo hat with the biggest smile on your face. I miss going up to you and Grandma after my matches and receiving compliments even though I played like shit. I'm so grateful for all the memories I have of you, but I wish there could have been more. One of my all-time favorites is when you were in the hospital over Christmas, and I was sitting next to you complaining about my lack of flexibility. All of a sudden, you break out into yoga moves, touching your knees to your head and spreading the eagle on your hospital gown. After looking back on it, I think you were trying to impress the nurses by making your 18-year-old granddaughter look pathetic, but that's okay because they were impressed. Then there was a time you asked the hospice nurse for a gin and tonic, and then a booze. Although you may not physically be here with us anymore, I know you're watching over to make sure the family is staying under control and behaving appropriately. I don't want to know what you and Uncle Mark are doing up there, but just remember you're not single and we don't want any little Shapiros running around up in heaven. Love, your favorite granddaughter.
It's funny because I only knew my grandpa for the last 25% of his life, and what will hopefully be the first 20 to 25% of my life. And while I think my interactions with him and my memories with him were really a reflection on his life, they're also going to shape my life. And there's three things that I want to make sure that I do as I get older and start my own family. My grandpa loved food. He loved the chocolate phosphate at, what's that place? Pashnash. I didn't even know they had a chocolate phosphate. He loved the marshmallow sauce in his ice cream. And he loved going out to eat with our family. And that's something that I've always cherished. And that's something that I hope to continue to appreciate as I get older. My grandpa never missed a match or a game. I think that's important. I mean, I know my sister and my cousins could look to the side whenever they're playing tennis and see grandpa there. When I was playing baseball or football, I could always look up and see grandma and grandpa in the stands. And I always remember seeing them walk in together. Grandpa would be about 50 yards ahead of grandma. They'd always be there. And I think that's important. Just his constant presence in my life meant a whole lot to me. Another thing that I will never forget about my grandpa is his laugh and his sense of humor. And I think he had one of the most refined sense of humor of anyone that I know. And he went through a lot in his life. I mean, he grew up in an orphanage. He fought in World War II, grew up during the Depression. He lost his son, but he never stopped laughing. And I think as long as you keep laughing and you go to those games and those matches and you enjoy the little things like the marshmallow sauce in your ice cream or the chocolate phosphate, then I think you're going to lead a fulfilling life. And that's what I've learned from my grandpa, and that's what I hope to do as I enter this chapter of my life without him.
And I just want to say thanks to Brian because you are a huge part of my grandpa's life, and he probably wouldn't have been alive for as long as he was if it wasn't for you. So we really appreciate it.
Well, before I start, I'm going to keep it together. My brother, my dad, he had to celebrate his life. It's sad that we celebrate. What I've learned about my grandpa, I just want to thank so many people that helped my dad. Sylvia Adama and her husband, Calvin Amada. Fantastic. Louis Stufra, my dad's doctor. Fantastic. My daughter just mentioned Brian. Couldn't have done without him. He was amazing. He took my dad under his wings. We were fortunate to have him. Susan Talby, unbelievable. She was so there for my family through some pretty tough times. The Barnes nurses and the Bethesda nurses. We had some issues with some rehab things, but we got them worked out. But those nurses at both places, fantastic. They took care of my dad and were amazing. Ann Renfro, for what she did with my dad when we got to Barnes. It was probably the last time I really had something to eat. Her famous milkshakes. Never forget those. Debbie Geyer from the Parkinson's Association, unbelievable. If people can donate to Parkinson's, I highly recommend it. It's a horrible disease. And my dad got probably every worst symptom, or not even symptom. I mean, he got hit with a bad case of it. And then all my family and friends that cards, letters, or whatever, cards, and just everything. I couldn't do it without them. They know who they are. I don't want to name them all because I forget something. So I came up with some remarks, and I hope we get through this without, trying to keep it strong. Back in 2006, the late Tim Russer, the host of Meet the Press, he wrote a book called Wisdom of Our Fathers, Lessons and Letters from Daughters and Sons. Well, in 54 years, soon to be 55, I've learned so much from my dad, both directly and indirectly. There will be no pity party here because I'm fortunate to have him for as long as I did. I was lucky to have a wonderful father. We would butt heads occasionally, but I have to say, I don't remember the last time I was angry with him. There was never a doubt that my father loved me and my brothers. As Russer states in his book, and I'll quote, "When my life is over, I know that the most important thing I'll be judged on is what kind of father I was. As my dad left this earth exactly 2 weeks ago today, I can tell you that my dad was told countless times that he was a fantastic father. Actually, I told that to him more than just 2 weeks ago. So for the next couple minutes, I would like to share with you some of the things that I learned from my dad. David kind of mentioned it, but because of my dad, I developed an appreciation for all types of music. Now I'm going to take some hits on this. Yes, Barry Manilow, Luther Vandross, Pavarotti, Michael Bublé, little musicals, opera, The Carpenters, and Shapiro. Because of my dad, I participated in sports and became an avid spectator. He was a role model for me because he coached me and I coached my kids, whether they liked it or not. Because of my dad, I learned the art of barbecue. My wife to this day tells everyone that she married me because of my barbecue skills. I my dad. And because of my dad, I learned the importance of family. Now, I can remember being younger, my dad would be up with my mom in their bedroom, and my dad would always yell down to me and say, will you bring me up, Kenny, bring me up a glass of water. Every night, I had to bring a glass of water to my dad. So there, I think, started my servitude. Over these years, I was always at his beck and call. But what's interesting is that I don't think I'll ever reap the rewards because I don't think my kids ever gave me a last name. Or did anything that I asked them to do. My dad had it pretty good. Because of my dad and mom, I learned about tolerance. My dad was a man of few words when it came to affection, expressing affection. And I learned, I guess later in life, that maybe I don't want to be like, I knew that he loved me, don't get me wrong, but he just wasn't a touchy-feely kind of guy. And later in my life, I think my dad became more expressive. He would say, I love you more. And I give a big assist to my kids because they're always saying, I love you. And Mary's the same way. So my dad actually kind of changed as he, became older. My dad always accepted me for who I was. His love was unconditional. My dad always lectured me about the value of the dollar. My kids have heard about this many times over. That they have to, you really need it. And to this day, whenever I make a purchase, I'm always hearing my dad say, now, do you really need it? And how much did it cost? And then he told me, he said, never pay full price. He was a guy from famous big company. And so I have to bring this out because after Easter, got my peeps. Half off. During the last 2 years, I spent a lot of time with my dad. Everyone who interacted with my dad knew that he's a funny guy, quick-witted to say the least. He had some tough times. He handled his adversity with humor and a stiff upper lip. He demonstrated so much courage. He was my hero. My dad is now in a better place. There are so many things that I will miss about him, but let me mention just two. Before I would go on a business trip, my dad would say, and I'm not sure if this is correct, he would say, "Geh gesund, komm gesund." Leave in good health and come back in good health. Every time I would leave, he would say that. I'll miss that a lot. And then the second thing I'll miss is when my dad would come over to the house. He would come to the back door and immediately go into the cupboard of our house and start looking for things to eat. Every time he would grab a thing of Planters dry roasted peanuts, settle into the couch, have something to drink. So now my memory of him is I can now envision my dad in heaven say to God, "Where's the nosh?" and settle into a chair and watch tennis with Brother Mark. That's what I hope.
This is what we do. We tell the stories and we begin the process of mourning. First for the week, and then for the month, and then for the year. And we know that with time, the feelings change. But what we hope is that the memories grow. It's really hard to talk about Harvey without Popey. They were married for 64 years. That's a long time. And yes, it was, and I can say this without her being here because she told me. When I asked her if it was love at first sight, she gave me a big smile and a twinkle and said, "Oh yes." The story goes that they were babysitting, not too excited, because his mother owned a bar, the Barrel. But they were meant to be. So at 19, Opie married Harvey, who had just come back from the army. He had been in India and in Okinawa, and apparently the most danger that he saw was a typhoon. That's what I heard. He came back and he went to Wash U on the GI Bill, like so many others. And when I asked what he studied, without missing a beat, Popey said, mischief. He worked at Famous Bar as a manager for 2 stores, and I know there are people here who knew him from Famous. And after he left Famous Bar, he and Popey went on the road together as reps for a clothing company. They were quite a pair. When he invented moving pictures, the production took over the whole house. It was the pictures that go on the visor, and Harvey's not here, and Popey told me that it was her idea to put them on the visor. That's what made them moving pictures. You go in the car. The production, I guess, took over your whole house. There wasn't a place in the house that wasn't, packing and acrylic, right? They were a great team. At business, at bridge, and at life. And I heard about Barbra Streisand, but I didn't hear the whole story. I just heard that it was a great event, that they saw Barbra Streisand and Funny Girl together in 1964 on Broadway, but we didn't hear the backstory, so thank you for that. There's so many stories, lots of memories, and especially with the two of them together, because they balanced each other. They did, very much. I even saw it, how they balanced each other. There was a glass that was half full and a glass that was not so full. He's coming back. Harvey lost his own father when he was 2 years old, and all the siblings but Mel went to the Jewish Children's Home. But like his brother Ernie of blessed memory, who we honored just 3 years ago on this very day, do you remember? It was Yom HaShoah. It was this very day in the Hebrew calendar that we had Ernie's memorial service right here. Harvey and Lee built a beautiful life together with a wonderful family who adored him, as you have heard. Though we all felt how his heart broke when his Mark died, he always had a smile for his grandchildren. He never kept that from you, even when he would see, especially Andrew and Max, when he would see, your dad or you. Andrew, Max, Melissa, and Scotty, as we've heard, he was at every game, every match, anything you did. Your grandparents were your biggest fans, and they were there. And I hope you will always continue, as Scotty said, in the next chapter of your lives, to feel him there at everything you do, cheering you on. As we've heard, fitness runs in this family, and Harvey was no exception. He played tennis and golf, and he stayed in great shape even with that yoga. That must have been quite a sight. I think I missed it that day. Maybe I'm kind of glad I did. I've heard that many of you saw them walking together, Harvey and Popey on Y Down, and that's true, with Harvey always a few yards ahead, but walking together. He was very much a part of the family volleyball and touch football games, and I'm not sure why this came up, but I know the Wolves are here, and I heard that no one was ever injured in those touch football games but Rick Wolf, right? Somehow he got hurt, right? Right. He even earned a gold medal in the Senior Olympics. But he also, as you heard, loved a good hot dog and a great snack. In fact, I learned that he would rush over to Straub's on the morning after Easter or Valentine's Day or Halloween or any candy holiday to get it on sale. And then he'd hide it. And there's a story about how in Claverack he would hide the candy in the liquor cabinet. And nobody cared much for the liquor, but they all found the candy. He was always up for a good nosh, a great barbecue, and with Popey's recipes, a great meal. Now, I have the recipe book. I am one of lucky people that have the recipe book, but every time I would talk about a recipe, Kenny would look at me without cracking a smile and said, "We have to kill you now, So, I'm saying that out loud, but I love the recipes because they're as much about your beautiful family and you as they are about the wonderful food that comes from them. At the very end, when he could no longer swallow, it was particularly difficult when Harvey would want a nosh and just couldn't have it. And he would ask for something, a little ice cream, he just couldn't have it. But when, Kenny especially would say, "You can't have that, Dad," I heard him say, "Okay, that's okay." He just didn't complain. I love that Harvey was always interested in growing and in learning, from the elder hostels that you went on to guitar and piano lessons in the middle of the day when you were working, to reading the paper every day, to listening, as we've heard, to all different kinds of music. I love the stories about the salute to Johnny Carson and the John Abel interview about the paper logs that he invented. And I know you'll keep finding him and feeling him everywhere. And when you need his positive outlook on life, his love of music, his business sense and creativity, you'll find him. When you find yourself saying, there's got to be a market for that, I hope it makes you smile and brings you comfort for your loss. As I said, this is the very same day that we had Ernie's service. It's the one day between Passover and Shavuot that we designate as Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Memorial Day. It's a day that we set aside to remember all who had no one left to say Kaddish for them, and we remember them with our own. Along with all of those who have gone before, we will remember Harvey Shapiro, the son of Fanny and Morris, the brother of Mel and Ernie of blessed memory and Bev, the life partner and soulmate of Popey. I love you so much. The father of David and Judy and Kenny and Mary and our dear Mark. The wonderful grandfather of Andrew and Felicia and Max and Scotty and Melissa. The uncle, the friend, and the great presence in all of our lives. And you know, I'm surprised you didn't bring this, but I brought the Tic Tacs. Because we have Tic Tacs in St. Louis because of Harvey. That's another truth. Oh, where'd those come from? Those are yours. I want I'm up here. Peace and Tic Tacs. I just know, as long as we keep smiling, as long as we keep telling those stories, as long as, you know, as that ship has come home, we keep remembering the wonderful life of Harvey. You know, it's not to say that there weren't a lot of bumps along the path. There surely were. And there was even some tragedy. But it didn't keep him from loving. It didn't keep him from living and laughing. And I want to make sure I mention Sister Carol too. Thank you for that. Somehow it wasn't in my Ernie notes, and I took those notes from the Ernie. So, is Carol here? There you are, Carol. Thank you. They wanted to make sure that we not mention their sister as well. So with you two, and with all the people that are gathered here, who really knew, I know his memory is already a great blessing. Amen. We have prayers that we say when someone goes from this world to the next. And we say that these prayers are a bridge to take his soul, knowing that we've done what we need to do to comfort his mourners and to begin the process of making sure he lives in our hearts. And so we have two prayers. First, the El Mole Rachamim prayer, a prayer that prays for his soul to be at peace. And second, we say together the words of the Kaddish. The prophet Job said, Adonai Natan, ve'Adonai Lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Levarach. It means, blessed is the one who has given us this life, and now that you have taken him from us, let us still find the strength to say, Yehi Shem Adonai Levarach. Blessed is God's name, now and forever. We are an ancient people, and we are well acquainted with grief in the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us, but the centuries have taught us that a good name, this good name, will endure beyond the grave, and there is strength in this faith. So with Job we say, Adonai Natan, God, you have given. You gave us a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we will offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai Lakach, now you have taken him from us. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust, Before we acknowledge your sovereignty and love, as we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Baruch, blessed is the name of God, now and forever. So I'll invite you to please rise to hear the words of the Elmali Rachamim prayer, a prayer that we'll use in the name of Herschel. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, please grant perfect rest now in your sheltering presence to our dear Harvey who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence and under the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bonds of everlasting life, be his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say together, you are your Father's Kaddish. It's by you saying these words that his soul is released and he is able to find his way to the loved ones who have gone before. And so I ask you to guide us through these words that don't mention death, but celebrate life. Once again, words that make a bridge between this world and the next, and we hope will become a comfort to you in this year of mourning. We say together, Yidkadal, Yidkadash, Yidkadal, Ve'alman, Yivrach, Yivutei, Ve'alit, Malchutei, Hayachon, V'yomachon, V'chayetako, Beit Yisrael, V'agalah, U'vizman, Kariv, Ve'imrume, Yehei Shmei Rabo, Mevarach, Le'olam, Omei, Omayim, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ar, V'yitramam, V'yitnoseh, V'yitadar, V'yitalei, V'yitalal, Shemei, V'kushah, V'ritu, Le'elah, Minko, Yerchata, V'shirata, Tushbachata, V'nechamata, Da'amiran, V'alma, V'imromei, Yehei Shlomo Rabo, Min Shemaya, V'chayim, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imromei. Say Shalom to Ramah, U'ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imromei. Oh, say Shalom to Ramah, U'ya'aseh Shalom,
Shalom.
peace truly bring peace to you who mourn, and comfort to all of those who are bereaved among us. As we say together, Amen. And as those of you who remember how comforting it was when others showed up for you, I know the family will welcome you to Harvey and Pokey's home in Clayton. And the address is 30 Brighton Way. Probably knows where it is. And just today they'll be sitting, but they welcome you to come back and share your stories. And I know there's one story I kind of expected someone else to tell, because he did have a way of, like he, got Marty into Barbra Streisand. I know there's a story about how he wanted to win a contest. And I don't know if I should probably admit this, but Dick Wow, I heard you gave him the answers. Right? You told me Dick Wow. Dick Weiss or Dick Wow? Dick Weil. He's smiling. Somebody gave him the answers so he could win the contest. I mean, I'm sure it was all legal. I'm sure it was. But I have a feeling I saw Scotty go, oh, I have another story. So I know there'll be lots of music. Of course, there'll be a great mash. There always is. And maybe even some more stories that will really help us bridge the sad loss of this dear man in our lives, to comfort his mourners and to make sure his memory continues to be a blessing. So let me say again now, Harvey. Lech Kishal Adonai, go your way, for God has called you. Lech Adonai yeh imach, go your way, may God be with you. Halach b'fanecha tziratcha, kavod Adonai ya'asnecha. May your righteousness go before you, and the glory of God and all that is good receive you with love. Amen. And in Ecclesiastes it reminds us that life is wonder. Even in these difficult times, we look around and it's springtime. Even on Yom HaShoah, that's the secret, you see, to find the wonder. Life is wonder, so as long as you live, you might as well live in awe. Remember that some days will be dark and others will be bright, but both are life's shadowed by. So make no snare for the light, for there's no salvation in holding on. Make no drama of the dark, there's no reward for suffering. Rather, embrace each as it is, knowing that true joy resides in observing each moment in love and in peace. Say with me, Amen. And I think as maybe Leslie sings a little more, I'll say shalom. We're going to let the family walk out first, because I know they want to get back to their home. And I hope you'll go and visit them there and enjoy this day. And I'm also supposed to remind people that
My camera? Yeah. I'll come back. See you there.
There is a Yom HaShoah memorial service. So the world will be crying as we're missing Harvey, but Harvey surely gave us something to give us hope.